everybody, and welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Dave Riedel. My pronouns are he, him. I write about movies, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
And my name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I, too, am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. I'm a co-host of the Slashers podcast. I'm also a member of Gallica, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics.
Yowza, you are.
I sure am.
Salute. You may notice that there are only two of us on the mics. We didn't accidentally cut Evan off. He's not here this week. He's off. It is a holiday week, so enjoy your week off there, Evan. And sorry you missed the Noir poll.
Yeah, I know. It's a bummer.
Yeah, I should mention over on Patreon, we did our monthly poll this month. We decided to focus on noir because you know what we like. And you all chose the 1951 Robert Ryan, Ida Lupino, directed by Nicholas Ray movie, On Dangerous Ground. I almost said On Deadly Ground again. On Dangerous Ground. And we had a great conversation about it. And so if you're a patron, please check it out. And if you're not a patron, please consider becoming one for $5 a month. You get extra bonus content each week, and you get to vote in a poll in which you can tell us which movie on the list is one that you want to hear us yap about. And we do a lot of yapping on Spoiler Piece. And while I'm at it, I want to go ahead and thank our sponsor piece patron, Heather Sachs. Heather, thank you very much for being our sponsor piece patron.
Thanks, Heather.
So this week on Spoiler Piece, we have two films to talk about. We are talking about the drama Know Your Place and the drama / comedy ? The Black Sea. And because Know Your Place is very Know Your Placey, and which is to say dramatic, we're going to start with that one. Now, I am going to attempt to pronounce the writer-director's name, which I have listened to, and his name it sounds like it's spelled. So let me see if I can get this right. Written and directed by Zia Mohadrejazbi. I did it. This is a story about about one Eritrean American boy and one of his friends. And here's your one-sentence IMDb summary. Amidst the landscape of a transforming city, Seattle, a young Eritrean American boy confronts the realities of change and loss. I mean, I guess that's true. It's a little vague.
Yeah, that is vague.
So basically what happens is you have this very American kid whose family is from Eritrea, and they've been living in, his mother lived in California, she said, for a long time. And then for reasons that I can't remember, they ended up in Seattle. And dad has died the year before, I think. And then they have an ill great uncle sleeping on the sofa. And Robel is the boy's name. And he's got an older sister who's kind of like flitting in and out of their lives. She's got this job that seems like is she like a nurse or a nurse's aide or something like that? I can't really remember.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure what she did for a job.
You know, whatever it is, it seems to be relatively serious because like she doesn't want to be late. She doesn't want to lose it. She's like, this is a good job. I got to fucking go to this job. And, they're constantly short on money since the father died. And his mother Rebel's mother is, would we call her not a disciplinarian, but she's very much a, this is the rules because this is our family.
Yes.
And this is how it goes. And so right in the beginning of the movie, they get a phone call from one of her cousins or one of her, I don't know, related to her husband in some way, but somebody who's important to them who they haven't heard from much since, the father / husband died. I don't know what to call. I don't even remember if they mention his name. But anyway, she says, "Hey, I'm sorry I haven't called you, and I'm sorry to call you for this reason, which is that my son has to go into the hospital. He needs a life-saving operation, and but well, actually, they don't know exactly what's wrong with him, which is why they want to put him in the hospital, and they think maybe he needs a life-saving operation. But I don't have the money, so can you give me some money? And we're also going to like be going back, like sending a bunch of stuff back to Eritrea because all the people back there need money too. And so mom's like, dude, yeah, we'll do whatever we can to help you, because that's just what kind of person she is.
Mhm.
And basically the rest of the movie is about Rebel having to sort of not pick up the slack, because that's not, I have a lot of trouble like forming sentences, but there's more that needs to be done than there are people to do it.
Mhm.
And so he wants to be, he's it's kind of interesting. He's sort of torn between being a normal American kid and being a dutiful son to his Eritrean mother. But at the same time, he feels a deep sense of responsibility to her.
Mhm.
And he does do the things that are asked of him. And the bulk of the movie is about him taking this suitcase full of, you know, Tylenol and medicine and clothes and all kinds of stuff over to this other family's house, along with, I didn't even realize this until he gives it to her, $500 in cash that he was just
Yeah.
keeping in his pocket. Did you know that was there?
Yes.
Okay, I missed it.
Yeah, that's why he freaks out and when he opens the front pouch of the suitcase,
Mm-hmm.
and because his friend who goes with him on much of this journey had taken it out because he didn't want anyone to steal it or to get lost, and that's why he's freaking out about it.
Oh, so
Yeah.
Fahmy had it.
Yes,
Okay.
Fahmy had it.
And gave it right back to him. Okay.
Yes,
Well, because
yes.
Fahmy's a good kid, but he's definitely a little looser than like
Yes.
Rebel's kind of like buttoned up.
Yeah.
He's a little tightly wound, whereas Fahmy's like, man, let's just go play basketball. Fuck,
Yeah.
which is what he spends a lot of the movie saying, actually.
Yeah. But to be fair to you, I don't know if they actually say there's cash in that. Like, I don't think it's explicitly
Right.
like said. So I don't think you missed something. Like, I don't think you were like not paying attention or something is what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to cut you some slack.
Thank you. Well, on this very important day where a lot of things are going on at once, Rebel takes it upon himself. He says, Mom, I'll take the suitcase over, and she's like, all right, take this bus and take this bus. And here's my phone in case you need to make a call. He's like, okay, great. So he gets on the bus, and one of his friends gets on the bus too. And they're just like shooting the shit, no big deal. And he realizes this is his stop, and he gets off the bus, and he's left his mom's phone on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
And that begins just kind of this series of cataclysmic events that threaten to just ruin everything.
Yeah.
And it is I'll just go ahead and spoil the ending. He survives, which there were a couple times I thought he's going to get unalived by either this cop or that guy who finds the cell phone.
Mm-hmm. Or the Karen in the car.
Oh my God. I think of all the ones. I mean, the thing with the cop made me angry, partially because Fahmy just wouldn't say, that's my house. But even though he shouldn't have to, I understand that.
Yep. No, he shouldn't.
And actually, and Rebel says, or does Fahmy say? I think Fahmy says, he's like, this is where I live, when the cop finally lets them go. I remember when I was watching that and thinking like, I'm so glad that this movie isn't one of those movies where like these kids are going to get unalived by the cops and then one pulls around the corner. I was like, oh, son of a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
So
well,
anyway,
especially when you're seeing like all those shots of people just standing there looking at the camera. I'm like, oh my God, one of these kids is going to die. One of them's going to die. Like, oh my God. So, yeah.
Yeah. So the reason that they get harassed by this cop is because Rebel and Fahmy go over to Fahmy's cousin's house to see if they can get a ride over to, is it the spot where the guy's going to meet them with the phone? No, it's not. It's to get to the house. It's to take the suitcase because he hasn't, he gets the text.
Oh, that's right.
He sends the text message from Fahmy's phone after the cousin drops them off, he's like, I got to be late.
Right.
I got shit to do. I can't be stuck in this, gridlock Seattle traffic. If you've ever seen Singles, you know all about Seattle gridlock traffic. So,
sorry, I only laugh because living in a city where the traffic is truly bonkers, whenever people talk about traffic elsewhere, I'm always suspicious.
Yeah. Which is Orlando traffic bonkers?
Oh, no, not Orlando. I mean Boston.
Yeah,
I'm talking about Boston traffic. No, people in Orlando talk about like, oh, the traffic's crazy. And I'm like, you need to shut the fuck up. You don't know what crazy is. This is not it.
It's not.
There's there's like a lot of cars on the road. That's not crazy traffic. But yeah, no, I mean like New York, LA, Boston. These are cities with unhinged traffic.
I think the thing about Boston traffic, I finally came to this realization, is not that the traffic is so bad, which it can be, but it's that the traffic is unpredictable. You have
sometimes, yeah.
It's just like you can be driving home from the city at 2:00 on a Tuesday afternoon, and it will take you an hour to get home, and then you can do it the next day, and it takes you 20 minutes. And it's like, what the fuck happened? You're like looking on Google Maps. There's no car accidents reported. There's no, lane closures for whatever. Mm-hmm. It's just everyone's just like, duh. So,
well, you also have to pay attention to, are the Sox in town? Are the Celtics in town? Like, you have to pay attention to, like, is there a concert in town? Like, you have to pay attention to so many various things. And also, it's a city that is not made for the amount of people living there and the amount of traffic that comes through.
I know I've talked about this, never on Spoiler Piece, I don't think. They keep well, I wrote a couple of stories on this when I was, doing non-movie reporting. Like, they keep building all this fucking housing in Boston, and they don't build any infrastructure to go along with it. It's like, you can't keep funneling people in here and not give them trains or extra lanes on the highway.
Right. Although extra lanes on the highway doesn't solve the problem, but that's a whole
No, it doesn't.
This is a whole other thing. But you're absolutely right. They do not build the infrastructure. And we could do a whole thing just talking about the ridiculousness of housing in Boston and why it's such an unlivable city, sadly, because it's also such a great city.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like it. Pardon me while I yawn, everybody. Excuse me. I had to take a certain someone to band practice at 7:00 this morning. So anyway.
Ooh.
Yeah. So not like he's in a band of like kids who are like, yeah, gonna rock out. I mean, like symphonic band.
He's doing School of Rock.
Yeah, school. Exactly. So what happens is they go to Ramel and Fahmy go to talk to the cousin who's going to give them a ride to the place where Rebel needs to drop off the suitcase. And they go back to Fahmy's house to get something. I don't even remember what. I think they left the suitcase over there because the suitcase is like full of shit and it's heavy. And so in the literally 5 minutes they've been gone, Fahmy's mother has left to go to work or to go do something, and she's locked the house, and Fahmy doesn't have a key. And Rebel even says, like, what, you don't have a key to your own house? Fahmy's like, no. So they find an open window and they crawl through, or Fahmy crawls through and then opens the door for Rebel, and, somebody calls the police. Now, this is the thing that kind of drives me nuts about this whole thing. I mean, racism should drive you nuts, but
well, yes.
It like, who made that call? If it's a neighborhood person, they have to know that's Fahmy's house. They have to know.
You would think.
It's on the corner. It's clear, like he's in the yard. Mm-hmm. Anyway. It's kind of maddening. And then the cop who pulls them over, at first I thought, well, he doesn't seem that bad, but then of course he escalates everything because because they're scared to answer his questions. Well, Rebel is scared. Fahmy is a little more defiant, although he's neither of them is like speaking badly or anything like that.
No, neither of them is rude.
They're just kind of like being quiet and trying to keep the situation as calm as they can.
Yeah, but Fahmy, rightfully so, is like, why? Like, what's the problem? Like, why are you telling us to put our hands in the car? Like, why are you giving us such a hard time? And yeah, the cop's just being a dick.
Yeah, he's just a dick. When he says to them at the end, it's like, if you guys had just told me your names, like we could have avoided all of this. And it's like, dude, don't even. You're so full of shit. Fuck you. So anyway, they go to the cousin. They get in the car. He drives them. He tells them a story about something. And then he sees all the traffic. He's like, I got to do other shit. And he drops them off like in the middle of Seattle.
I know, it's so terrible. He's just like, bye.
Yeah. He's like, there's a train around here somewhere. Go get him a train. It's like, all right. So Rebel takes Fahmy's phone and he sends a text to his mom's phone. He's like, whoever finds this phone on the bus, call this number. I need my phone back. And so somebody, like, Fahmy's like, this fucking number keeps calling me back. God damn. And Rebel's like, that's for me. And he picks up the phone and this guy's like, I'm going to sell your phone unless you give me $200 and meet me at this place. And they're like, that's like a nice neighborhood. We don't want to go up there. The guy's like, well, that's where I'm going to be. So fuck you. And so they go to this nice neighborhood with their suitcase and they're sitting at the address where this guy told him to meet them on the step. And this fucking Karen pulls up. And at first I was like, oh, this is the person who found the phone.
Yeah, me too.
She doesn't look like the kind of person who'd say like, I'll give you your phone back for $200. And it turns out she's just wants to know why there are two black kids, sitting on steps. And she's like, well, that house, those people have had packages go missing lately. And it's like, first of all, no, they haven't. Second of all, go fuck yourself. And they are rightfully indignant. And she's doing that thing. She's like, stay right there. I'm going to call the police. And it's like, stay right there, lady. Are you out of your mind? You fucking stupid. Yes, I mean, the entitlement. Just stay right there. Oh, okay, white lady. We'll stay right here.
Well, I think that's the thing. Like, would she have given two white kids a hard time? Of course she wouldn't.
No, absolutely not. I mean, when people try to pretend, well, as all young men, people might be wary of young white men, but they're not going to be like, oh, these young white men are stealing shit. Fuck yourself. So, I know, it just makes me so mad. So the guy shows up right when Karen is interrogating them, and Rebel sort of ingeniously, I didn't realize that this was going to be, he just like whacks the guy with the suitcase and
after he pretends to be counting money out.
Exactly. And Fahmy grabs the phone and they both take a handle on the suitcase and they run like hell through this neighborhood. And they think they're safe. They find an alley, and then this dog starts barking at them, and they get scared, and they back into the alley, and then they see the guy turn into it. And they're like, shit, and they have to run off, and then they have to go back and get the suitcase. It is a miracle that no one steals the suitcase.
I thought the suitcase was going to get stolen from the very first time he stepped off the bus.
I did too.
Yeah, I was shocked too that this suitcase did not get stolen.
And what I'm realizing is it's a lot safer to be a suitcase in Seattle than it is a young black kid. So,
ding, ding, ding. And how pathetic and tragic is that?
And just all the hoops he has to jump through. They find a cab driver who helps them out, which he takes them to the nice neighborhood, and he doesn't charge them for the fare. It turns out he's Eritrean too. And he has like a conversation about how his Muslim wife brings him closer to his Christian God, which I was like, this is an interesting conversation. And he points at the meter. He's like, just remember, I'm a nice guy. It can't be that nice if you're telling me you're nice, but okay.
Yeah, right.
Well, I thought he was going to give him a hard time or steal something from them, or or when they stopped off at that other address, be like, there's something weird that he's picking up, right? and he's going to be like, hey kids, take this over into that building and wait for 5 minutes for a guy named Gio. Oh, I should mention, when they're running away from the guy who's chasing them in the car because of the cell phone thing, they go to an estate sale.
Yes, they do.
And I was just like, at first I thought it was like an open house. And then the woman says, "Have you ever been to an estate sale before?" And I don't remember who says what. One of them, I think Fahmy says no, and Rebel says yes. I've been to one other estate sale, and she's like, "All right," and she's kind of eyeing them, just like, "Okay, guys," but at the same time, she just lets them do their thing.
Right.
She doesn't give them a hard time. And I was like, if these poor kids have another fucking, Karen moment, I'm just gonna be like, all is lost.
Yeah. No, thankfully she's very nice, because they do look kind of like weird, like in the like they don't like the way they keep like looking around, and they're like, "This is open to the public, right?" And she's like, "Oh yeah."
Yeah.
And she's like,
well, they're also
around.
like sweaty because they just like ran,
right,
4 blocks from this psycho chasing them. I know that fucking guy. He made me so mad. It's just like
the phone guy.
Yes. Yeah. It's like.
Especially like when you see their 2 kids, like they're just like teenagers. Like, leave them alone.
And they really are kids. I think that Rebel says he's 15 at one point, and it's just like, yeah, you look 15. You really do.
They're babies. They're just kids.
So long story longer, he finally gets the suitcase. He like loses his shit at one point, and he's trying to beat up Fahmy.
Yes.
And Fahmy like does he grabs him and holds him tight, and he's like, I get you over and over. And it's just like a nice moment because Rebel, finally calms down. And even though he's still kind of mad at Fahmy, he's just like, this guy understands. He understands. He's been through everything I've been through as a kid in this city. And then Rebel finally gets the suitcase to the place he's going to go. And one of the recurring funnier themes in this movie is how every older woman in this movie tries to feed him and tells him he's too skinny.
Yes.
And he finally meets the woman who will not take no for an answer. And so he's reluctantly sitting at her kitchen counter eating, a plate of traditional food. And then one of the other women just mentions, oh, blah, 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 blah. Back when I was living in the Redwoods, you guys are moving there, so you'll see it soon enough. And he's like, what?
Yeah.
And she's like, you can tell she's got that look on her face. She's like, I fucked up.
Yeah. Like, oh shit.
and she just finally says, she's like, I'm sure you'll really, really like it. And he's like, and so he gets, the poor kid. The next thing you see is him sitting in the bus on the way home. And I thought something else horrible was going to happen to him. No, you just see a single tear roll down his face. Poor kid. And then he gets home and his great uncle is like wandered out of the house.
Oh, because he's dealing with, he's senile.
He's got dementia or Alzheimer's or something. And he doesn't quite recognize Rebel, but he goes with him and Rebel gets him changed for bed. And then his mom comes home and she's been trying to call him all day. And you can tell she's just furious, you know, but she's decided not going to scream and yell because he got the suitcase where it was supposed to be. And, the only thing she says is she's cutting food. She's making food.
Yeah.
And the only thing she says is, where's my phone? And instead of giving it to her, Rebel just goes over and he gives her this hug of
like
everything.
Desperation and rage, sadness everything.
and love and everything that he's feeling comes out in this hug, and it's very quiet, and her arms are kind of dangling at the side at the moment, and you can tell she just makes the decision. It's like, oh, he needs this, and she just holds him, and then eventually he lets her go and he puts the phone down on the counter and he says, it's right there. And then the movie ends.
It sure does.
Yeah. I mean, what a ride. I was really thinking this was what's the Michael B. Jordan movie where he plays the kid who was shot on the train platform?
Fruitvale Station.
Fruitvale Station. I really thought this was going to turn into something like that.
Yeah, I did too, because it reminded me of another movie, which now, and it's a brilliant movie, and now I can't, of course, think of the name of it. But yeah, especially when the people were standing on the sidewalk and you keep seeing them, and I'm like, oh my God, I've seen a scene like this before, and it's right before someone, dies. So anyway, yes, but I'm glad it was not, for various reasons, I'm glad it wasn't that kind of movie.
Yeah. I also didn't really know what to expect because the trailer is sort of I watched the trailer. I know you probably didn't.
I did not. I don't watch trailers. As a general rule.
The trailer is generally pretty, I mean, vague's not the right word, but it doesn't give you a strong sense of what you're going to see. But the movie is called Know Your Place. So if you didn't have any idea what this movie was going to be about, well, the Karen and the cop and whoever else clue you in. Oh my God, they've had packages stolen from their. Shut the fuck up. You're so full of shit. Fuck you. And whoever she is, she plays that perfectly. She's just the fucking right amount of entitled asshole.
Yeah. I mean, she's just trying to justify her racism at that point.
I know. Just
so gross.
Pathetic. Anyway, I talked a lot. What did you think of this?
I liked this. This for me was kind of a slow burn. Not so much a slow burn in the sense of the way the film unfolds, although it is kind of slowly paced. But it's kind of a slow burn in that it took me a little bit to get into it. But once I was really invested in their journey, in what was going to happen. Is this suitcase going to get stolen? Is this suitcase going to make it? Is Rebelle going to be okay? Are Rebelle and Fahmy going to be okay? And I think there are a lot of really compelling conversations that happen in the film about connection, about like the cab driver talking about labels and how everybody's trying to label each other, and it's just different names for the same thing. There's a lot of talk about like being a refugee and being in a different place and not feeling like you belong, but yearning for your old home. Because like their mom, Rebelle's mom, says something to him and his sister about how like you don't know what it's like to leave a place and yearn for a place. Yeah. And that's really sad. And then Rebelle and Fahmy at one point talk about like they look at a house that a friend of theirs used to live at that no longer does. And so there's just a lot of talk about like not fitting in. And sometimes it's explicit, but sometimes it's just kind of in the ether and in the way that the white people, the shitty white people in the film, make these two Black teens feel like they don't belong, even though they've lived here their whole lives. So I think there are a lot of really intriguing and compelling topics being discussed and being addressed here, and I think it's a really moving story about Rebelle and about his friendship and what it means to be connected to your family. And I just think there's a lot happening in kind of a seemingly simple story. Like, they're just taking a suitcase across town and that's the plot, but there's so much more that happens. So I liked this. What did you think?
I liked it a lot too, and I feel pretty much the same way you do. Very similarly, like at the beginning I was just like, what the fuck is this slow ass movie doing? This is way too languid.
Yes, I thought the same thing. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to fall asleep.
But then when it gets to the crux of the story, which is the delivery of this suitcase, which is not about the delivery of the suitcase. It's about everything that can go wrong when you look like you do when you're delivering this suitcase.
And how easily it can unravel.
In 1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean... I thought the kids were really good. I think this movie looks really good.
I do too.
The colors in this movie are rich.
Yes.
A lot of good outdoor cinematography. And just like the greens are really green, and the browns are really brown, which is kind of a funny thing to say, but a lot of the buildings are brown, for Christ's sake. And like Fahmy's jacket is just that brilliant red. I mean, and everything is just like really sharp and deep without looking like it's colorized by Ted Turner or something like that. Kids, if you don't know who Ted Turner is, he's Jane Fonda's third husband. So anyway, Yeah, I like this a lot. I think that it's kind of like what we were saying about on Dangerous Ground over on Patreon, is that opening section is slow, but once you get to, the next bits that are building off of it, it all makes a lot of sense. Doesn't make it any less slow, but
no,
but at
but you
least,
need it,
yeah,
arguably. Yeah.
like you really have to establish
Yes.
what's going on. And I think it's a really smart choice to begin the movie with the boys just playing basketball at school.
Mm-hmm.
And Rebel is interrupted by a phone call from his sister, who's like, "You're supposed to be home." And he's like, "Well, I'm playing ball at school." She's like, "Well, we ran out of blah, 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 and you got to go get some." He's like, "Well, I don't have any money." "Well, I talked to whatever the store owner's name is, and he's, going to put it on the tab." And he's like, "All right." And then that's when you realize, oh, he's got a foot in both worlds. He's got this family responsibility, and he'd rather be doing kid stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he's a little bit disengaged because of the death of his father, but he's he wants to be a good kid, and he is a good kid.
Yeah,
that's the thing. He is a good kid. And he also wants to be helpful to his mother, even though he doesn't want to be.
Right. Well, I mean, what 15-year-old, doesn't want to, hang out with their friends or do their own thing. So
Right.
It's understandable.
Yes.
I also really like I love the use of language in this, and I love how not his sister, because his sister code switches, but his mother and a lot of the other like friends' mothers, they speak. I think they're speaking Arabic, or they might be speaking the other native language of Eritrea. But I certainly recognize certain Arabic words. But I love how they all speak in their language, and then but he's responding in English, and I don't know that I'm always amazed at bilingual people. But I like that. I like that again. That kind of shows his duality as far as the way you said, like he's in these two different worlds.
Well, and we should mention too that they make it clear that all the people who are speaking the home language also understand English, because whenever he answers them in English, they know exactly what he's saying, and they just reply to him. And he speaks the language sometimes in the movie.
Yes, he does.
But I mean, I don't know. There are so many languages. If it's like, most countries, it has a lot of different languages because it has a lot of different groups of people.
Very true.
Grouped together under a border drawn by, somebody who didn't live there originally. So I guess is one way to put it. Anything else to say?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, then that was Know Your Place. I think that Megan and I both dug it in a your mileage may vary kind of way. I mean, I dug it more than I didn't dig it. The only thing I would say about it is that the first 30 minutes or so, it's just like, fucking step on the gas.
Yeah, you need to be a little patient with it in the beginning.
Oh, here's one thing I did want to mention about one thing that I thought was really sharply observed. That isn't even, it's not a race thing or whatever. It's how when you want somebody to do something for you and they are being an absolute cocksucker about it, and they're going to do the thing, but they're just being shitty. When they go to the cousin and say, "Can you give us a ride?" And all he wants to do is talk about where are you going, and then make fun of the people who live there, and give the kids a hard time, to be like, "Well, you got to get out of my car by 4:00 because I got things." He has nothing to do. But he's like, just like, "Can you give us a ride?" "Oh, I just got home from work." Yes or no, man? Can you give me a ride? And you can just see these two kids. They're just like desperate. They need a ride. And he's just shooting the shit with his buddy and giving them a hard time. And it's just like, dude. And when, your friends are always doing that shit, or at least mine were when you were a teenager, it's be like, dude, are we going to go do this thing or what? Well, you remember so-and-so, like, it I thought that was really sharply observed, I guess is what I said. So there you go.
All right.
Cocksucker might be a strong term.
Well, I was going to say, it's also arguably a homophobic term. So.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I have never used it in that context.
No, but I know you have not. I know you are not that person. But that's why I always cringe when I hear it, because I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, no, I get it. All right, we'll put that one in the reserve pile then. So we're going to move on to The Black Sea, which is in its own way a movie about not belonging. I mean, very much so about that. This is another movie with a relatively straightforward plot that has, I would say, one of the most unusual. Well, let's talk about this. There's your IMDb summary. This is listed as a comedy drama, by the way. I would say it's more dramatic than it is comedic.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm like. I don't really think of it as a comedy drama, but okay. Yeah.
Well, I think Khalid is kind of comic in his persona.
Yes.
But anyway, we'll get to that. A man journeys to a small Eastern European coastal town in Bulgaria, where he finds unexpected connections despite being the only black person in the area. That's a little bit, I don't want to use the word whitewashed, but that's a little bit like not exactly right. It's a little...
It's like it is, but it's not. Yeah.
And this stars the co-director, Derek B. Harden, and I think he's also a writer, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I was like, this film was not really written. It was improvised, so...
It definitely feels like it. And it definitely feels like that in the edit in some places too. It's just like, because there are several times in this movie where it seems like the story is going one direction. And then there are these edits and you realize it's a couple days later and they've done this kind of weird time jump. And then they sort of acknowledge what happened, but then they pretend like it doesn't really matter. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like the night when he has the two older women stay over and sleep on the floor with him in the cafe when they have the investor coming to look. And, Ina kind of like shoos him away. And then you can tell that he's just like living on his own on an island for a couple of days. And then he gets back to the mainland. No explanation for how he got to the island.
Well, he had somebody two guys put a bag over his head.
Oh, and then he wakes, right.
Yeah, and then he wakes up on an island. And then you're like, but wait, how did he get back? Who were those guys? What happened? Like, did he have his stuff stolen? Like, what's going on? Yeah, and it isn't really explained.
No, and he's kind of he becomes a local celebrity, partly because he is the only, there are no black people in this part of Bulgaria. And so the reason he ends up over there is because the movie opens with these two women. This is one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life, which is why it surprised me that this movie is actually so dramatic. Because you have a woman who I guess is some kind of soothsayer, fortune teller, whatever, and she's talking to another woman and she says, "There's trouble in your future." And she's like, "Okay, when?" She's like, "Now." "Oh, what can I do?" She's like, "Not much." "Is there anything I can do?" She's like, "You need to be touched by a black person." And she's like, "Where am I going to find a black person?" And the woman says, "Facebook." And then it cuts to, Khalid going to his job and being late and, him telling his boss that I thought this was like kind of the classic thing. I know so many people who've worked in food service who, when you've got what seems to me a husband, wife, or whatever duo running a restaurant, and you've got the good cop and the bad cop, and the husband in this case is the bad cop. He's like, you're always late, you're always fucking shit up, and he's like, "Yeah, but today I quit." And the wife's like, "No, don't quit. I mean, hey, what do you need? We can
let's talk this out."
Yeah, and the husband's like, "Yeah, go away." And he's like, "You know what I need? I need matcha." She's like, "Sure, we'll get you matcha." And he's like, "Bye." And then he goes to Bulgaria. And the woman has died right before he's arrived. In fact, it's so recent that she's still in the house and they haven't even made funeral arrangements yet. She's just dead in the house and her son is there. And the son doesn't know that his mother's made this arrangement with Khalid. At least I don't think so.
No, because Khalid tells him. He's like, because he's like, who are you? And he's like, oh, I'm here for whatever his mother's name
adult
is.
Time.
Yeah, I'm here for adult time. Like,
which I heard that. And if I heard that, it'd be like, adult time? You mean like, you talking about like a corkscrew through a donut? Like, what are we talking about? So he gets shooed away, but before he gets shooed away, he gets thrown out by the son, who is a dick, but just kind of treats Khalid like he's a loon, which Khalid is a little bit of a loon. I mean, he's definitely...
He's out there.
He's got a big personality.
Yes, he does.
He's outgoing. He's funny, to his credit. He's obviously very bright, but he's also... I mean, if you're, being contacted by a woman on Facebook and dropping everything to fly to Bulgaria for whatever, you're probably a little untethered,
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, the son kicks him out, but then he sneaks back in and steals 3 oranges and just like looks at the brother the whole time he's doing it. I thought that was hilarious. He's just like taking these oranges, because he's got nowhere to go. He tries to find a hotel. He can't find one. He ends up sleeping in a boat. His bag gets stolen with his cash and his passport.
Mm-hmm.
He tries to get help from everybody. No one can help him because they don't speak English or is willing to help him. And then he finally runs into Ina, who she's sitting outside the store, and he says, "Hey, can you help me?" And she's like, "What do you need?" And she speaks perfect English. And he's like, well, what is this store? And she says, "It's a travel agency." And he's like, "Great. I need to get to Brooklyn." And she's like, "Okay, can you just let me finish my break?" And he's like, "Oh, sure." And I thought this was great too. He just goes down and sits quietly on the bench next to the store. And then like 90 seconds later, she's like, "Okay, come on." And I thought there were lots of nicely observed moments like that, or just like real, like I can see but somebody being kind of salty, like, "Listen, man, I'm just having my fucking coffee and smoking a cigarette. Would you leave me alone?"
Yeah.
And I get the feeling that because he's worked in the service industry, he's like, "Okay, you need your time, whatever. I'll go sit down."
He gets it. He understands.
And as we learn, the passport stolen kind of puts him in a bind. No passport, can't buy a ticket because you have to enter all the passport information. So Ina says, "Go work for this guy he owns the dock, where all the boats are moored." Because this is a very lovely, picturesque slice of Eastern Europe. And so he goes over there, and of course it's the son of the woman who's died. And so, but he starts working for him, but the guy treats him like shit. He wants him to pick up dog shit, like with his hands. And that's when Khalid is finally like, "No." And then the guy picks up dog shit.
God.
I know. But then the guy picks up dog shit to show Khalid that it can be done. And Khalid's like, "Gross."
Yeah. That guy's an ass.
Yeah, that guy sucks. And it turns out he's not like mafia, but he owns a ton of real estate and stuff in this town. So he's kind of got everybody under his thumb. But Khalid goes back to Ina, and he's like, "I'm hungry, whatever." And she's like, oh, he's like, "What are you making?" Because she's making herself like a cheese sandwich. And she's like, "Well, this is, bread, and that's the cheese." And he tells this story about how they were so poor that he used to make the same kind of sandwiches. And eventually that becomes them opening a cafe where they make these sandwiches with these roasted red peppers, and everyone loves it. Partly they love it because they love it, but they also just like, everyone kind of likes him. And he has these open mic nights where people sing, and and when that cop walked in to the travel agency that morning, I thought he was going to and he picks up something from Ina's desk. I thought he was going to break everything in there and be like, "Get out of here, black dude." And instead, he hands over Khalid's passport.
Yep.
And he says, "I like DMX." It's like, what the fuck is going on here? I mean, did he steal the passport? Did he find the passport? like, what?
Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of unanswered questions in this movie. Like
Yes.
we were talking about the editing right at the beginning. Like, let's just start with, I mean, it doesn't really matter what the story is in this movie.
No, pretty much it's a loose story other than he goes to Bulgaria, loses his passport, opens a cafe with Ina. That's the story.
And one guy says to him, it's like, so you're over here in America, you're doing the Bulgarian dream? He's like, no. And I think this is a missed opportunity because Khalid says, well, what's the Bulgarian dream? And he says, well, it's the American dream, but in Bulgaria. And what he should have said was, it's like the American dream, but smaller. That's what he should have said. So anyway, what did you think of the Black Sea?
So kind of similarly to Know Your Place, I had a harder time getting into this. At first I was like, I am not feeling this. I am not into this. I do not like this. What is going on? And then it kind of slowly wormed its way into my heart.
Yeah.
And like, I think it really, for me, it really found its stride when he opens the Blue Flowers Cafe. And I love that it's like it's a cafe in quotes because it's like ramshackle tables and just chairs just pulled randomly.
Yeah.
And he like handwrites the menu of like green matcha because I love that he like nobody really knows matcha and he's like obsessed with matcha tea and he makes it and he's making those sandwiches, the princessa, he calls them like the brownstone princessas and a couple other things. And I love that it's just like very low key, but he makes he makes it very communal space. And I love that he and Ina work so well together and they have this great rapport. And so for me, when things start going well and when that like when the cafe is kind of like grooving and everything's flowing, I'm like, okay, this I love. And I love the scene where Khalid and Ina go to the Black Sea and they're at like kind of these ruins, this wall, and he's like obsessed with it. And he's like, this place is so beautiful. I could stay here forever. And she's like, yeah, I don't really get why you're so into it, but sure, it's nice. And he's like, no, it's beautiful. This is like paradise. And she talks about how she's scared of the sea, but she has a respect for it. And there's something in the way they're talking that it's like they're not just talking about the sea. And I really loved that exchange. And I like at the end, so we haven't talked about how he like fucks up because he parties with those two women and the little loan officer is coming to like check out the place because Ina found a space on a really busy street that they can open like a real cafe and really make something of it. And he totally blows it by he's supposed to close up shop early to clean everything up for this loan inspector and he doesn't. Instead, he parties with these two women. And, the loan officer comes and like the place is a disaster and he's sleeping in the back with these women. And, it's just a mess. But then like things kind of tidy up quickly after he's abducted to an island and then mysteriously comes back. He comes, to Ina, who's trying to run the cafe by herself, and he gives her money and he's like, this is the down payment for the cafe. And it kind of wraps up a little too quickly. But I like the next scene when he's there with Ina and her sister and they're like putting like the mud baths on themselves and they're going into the sea and they have this hug and it's kind of like this lovely moment between them, this kind of unspoken connection between them. And I really liked that. So for me, basically it's a long-winded way of saying it took a while to get into it. I took a while to get into it. But then once I finally did, I was like, yeah, I like this. But it's a very abrupt ending too.
It
like
sure you talked
about the strange edits, and I think the ending is very strange too. So I'm not quite sure what to make of it, but I think that there are good things here. I think the improvisation, I think it would have worked. I think this film would have worked better if there was a structured script, but I think the improvisational moments work in certain scenes with people. I just don't think it works to have the entire film improvised.
Right.
So for me, I think it would have been a little bit better if there was a more structured script for certain parts and if the editing was different. But yes, I did eventually like this. What did you think?
I feel very similarly. I think one of the things that helps it is I don't know what kind of past work that Derek B. Harden has done. I would assume not much if I had to guess.
Looking at his IMDb he has not had much.
Yeah. But he's very charismatic and he's good. He's really good in this role. But it helps that there are some like super professional actors in this. Like,
yes,
Ina is. I've seen her in something. I couldn't tell you what, but I looked her up, and it's like she's got a long list of credits, and she's very good in this part. I really liked her, actually.
I do too. I think she's great.
I think she's great, and I just it's not even that she's disappointed when the whole thing goes south with the loan officer. It's just like she cannot believe this actually happened.
Yeah,
the look on her face, because just like everything was going so well, and they have. I kept wondering when it was going to turn into a romance because I was just like, this feels like, but it doesn't. It's this romance adjacent, I guess. Adjacent is the word today.
Yeah, I think it's very romance adjacent because I got a very much a romance vibe from them, even though it doesn't quite blossom into that. Yeah.
Right. Like they really care for each other a lot.
Yes.
And you can tell that it's not superficial. It's like something about them. It's like when they're having that conversation about the sea and whatever, and he says, I could stay here forever. And he says something to the effect of, because this is the place where I finally like found myself and what I'm supposed to do.
Yes.
And he's like, I've always been trying to do that and I could never do it. And here it is.
Yep.
And you can tell that because she was kind to him at the beginning and because she likes him and has gone on, he's inserted her into this journey and she has happily come along,
Yes.
She's decided, it's like, I like your energy and I like what you're doing. Let's, and you can tell that he just has a lot of fondness and respect for her and it works both ways. And so when that moment comes toward the end where she's just got that look on her face like, Jesus fucking Christ. So anyway, so it helps that she's a professional actor and she's clearly got experience in improv.
Yes.
And I don't know I can't remember who else is professional. I think Gorgie is the asshole. But yeah, I think that this movie is it's not undone by, but it is not aided by the disjointed. I mean, there's a loose framework, but the editing is all over the place, which I think is probably a function of the improvisatory nature. But also it does feel like that there are gaps in the story, in particular that one I like the, bag over your head kidnapping. And then all of a sudden, when he comes back to the cafe that she's running by herself, and it's like, oh, all is forgiven. Let's go to the Black Sea.
Right. It was just so abrupt. I'm like, wait a minute. There's no conversation. There's no like, what? Yeah, it was weird. It was weird.
I mean, it could be one of those things where it's like they don't need to have a conversation because they just understand each other. But I think that even though you can see that in most of their scenes, I think you need just that, like that look.
Yes.
Yes. That acknowledgement, so.
Yeah, because she looks at him, like, I feel like they were trying to go for that because she looks at him like kind of like oh, you came back, thank you. But like, no, he really fucked up.
He really fucked up.
Yeah. Like really fucked up. And it was like that day, like she's like, you got this, right? You got this. And he's like, oh yeah, I can take care of everything. Don't worry. Like, it wasn't like it was a week later. It literally was like 5 hours later and he fucked up. So it's like, I think it requires more than just a look.
Yeah.
Better be a damn good look.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how I felt about it. The same way you did. We are simpatico on this week's movies.
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
Pretty
That's
sweet.
so interesting. Yeah. We're so in sync.
I know. Do you have any final thoughts on the Black Sea?
Oh, yes, I do. I think it's funny. We talk about this a lot, how we often will do films that kind of have a similar theme or kind of are an interesting double feature. And I think this one is too. On the kind of like the obvious side, because both films feature Black protagonists. But I think it's really great when they're at the Black Sea at the end and he sees another Black man and he's so excited and he's like, oh my God, you're Black too. I am not the only one.
Yeah.
And like it's just like a very sweet little moment, but kind of an impactful one too. But yeah, I feel like there was something else I was going to say and now I can't remember. Oh well, it's not important, but I liked those little moments. Yeah, but I agree with you that there are some challenges this film faces. But yeah, I like the little moments overall.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like we would both recommend these with caveats. So be prepared for the long opening.
Yes.
For Know Your Place. And be prepared for some of the editing and storytelling in the Black Sea to make you go, the fuck is going on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, then we are going to wrap up this here episode of Spoiler Piece Theater. Thank you very much for joining us. I always forget to get the Spoiler Piece outro list out when I am hosting the show. So I'm going to try to do this off the top of my head. You can find Spoiler Piece Theater anywhere you get podcasts. If you would like to get in touch with us, our email address is spoilerpiece@gmail.com. Tell us we are incorrect about the Black Sea, and it is the most buttoned up story you've ever seen in your life. Another way to get in touch with us is to give us a call
at 862-21-PEACE.
Leave us a voicemail. Let us know how you feel. I have forgotten some other things like, oh, yes, if you would like to rate and review us, we would really appreciate that. You can go to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece and you can leave us a review there. A kind review, thank you. Or you can go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, whatever your podcast platform of choice is, and be like, Spoiler Piece Theater's the fucking best. Woo!
Woohoo!
Yeah. And I also want to thank our wonderful editor, Otto Clamor. Otto, thank you for making us sound great each week.
Thanks so much, Otto.
And I think that is everything that I'm supposed to mention.
No, social media. Don't forget social media.
That's right. We're on Facebook as Social Theater, as Spoiler Piece Theater, and we're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd.
And Blue Sky now.
Oh, and Blue Sky. That's right. I just opened our Blue Sky profile because I was opening up a bunch of them. So there you go.
And Threads.
Oh, Threads. That's right.
You did that too.
Yep. And I left Twitter, everybody. So I was just going to mention this part. My name is Dave Riedel. I write about movies. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. If you want to find me on your social medias, I am Dave Sees Movies on not Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Threads, and Blue Sky.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I write for Edge Media Network. I'm a co-host of the Slashers podcast. I, too, am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and I'm a member of Gallica. You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Opinion-S World or on Instagram and Letterboxd at The Opinion-S.
See you next week, everybody. Bye.
Bye.